All right, here we go. We're recording now. All right, thanks for that, Linda. And again, in the chat, feel free if what everyone's saying is resonating with you, if you are also sort of having your frustrations with what's not happening in the industry or with the skills in L&D, go ahead, throw those in the chat. We're gonna pay attention to that. Now, Linda and Reese, I think you both said, obviously, we speak a lot about the brain. When I design, whether it is a session like this, whether it's a key, whatever it is, I feel a very heavy weight of responsibility to share as much as I do know about the brain knowledge, and as well as serving up all of the learning design and the learning science as well. So a lot of it has to do with it being a bit personal too. So here's your next question coming up on the screen. And once again, for those who are just listening in, I'll read it out for you. And the question is this: how did learning about the brain help you see people differently? Whether that be the learners or your colleagues, your family, your friends, even yourself.
So I think that it really highlights just how incredible the brain is and that it is a very complex system and we've never really learned how we learn. We just follow through, especially through the educational system. They kind of have standards that they've been rolling out for a very long time. And I mean, it gets us through those systems, but especially for adult learners, it's very different. And we need to make sure that we understand how our brains actually learn so that when we're developing any sort of content or sharing knowledge with others that we do it in the way that's most impactful. Again, it's been a big pet peeve of mine where a lot of the time our learning sessions are like a 3 hour webinar or a 8 hour session, and then that's all that we do. We don't follow up with it, we don't repeat it, we don't reinforce it, and that's oftentimes due to budgetary constraints and other things, but that's not how we learn. So
Mhm.
by having the evidence that you share with us and all the research and science behind that, it makes a stronger case for how we can build our programs better and make sure that we're revisiting content and not just having these one and done or check the box training where we say, yeah, we taught you that 6 months ago, you should be an expert now. That's not the way the brain works.
And I think that's a good place for us to share that part of what they did in the labs as a closing activity was to audit a piece of learning yesterday. And it took you all 15, not even 15 minutes to click, 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 click. And at the very end, they all got certificates and now they're all certified as sales trainers. So that was a good example. And Linda, what about yourself? How did help learning about these things?
Everything that Reese said, and I think it's forced me to look at my own learning design differently. In the session, Lauren said, "How do we design learning to help someone become the audience to their own performance?" And I've been thinking about that, and sorry, it kind of makes me emotional to think about. Um, the focus being to think about it not being about me at all, to really remind me that I am the facilitator of their learning. And it's so for me, it's going back to what I've designed before and looking at it with fresh eyes. But it also helps me understand my own actions and reactions. And I had an incident that I shared in the session about somebody cutting me off on the road, and I understanding how my brain reacted helped me understand the emotional components that were going on. And so I think this session can help us become better learning designers, but it also can help us understand how we interact with other people in this world, how other people react to us. And so I think it has far greater implications than just learning design.
And I think everyone who's on this call right now can see that Linda is a very lovely, soft-spoken person. So to hear her road rage story was absolutely epic for all of us in the lab. But fortunately, it did follow. I think that your previous session was on feelings and emotions,
Mhm.
and so to have that knowledge of who we lovingly call Amy, Corey, and Hugo, that's empowering. right? So for everyone who's on here as well, know that when you're coming into the lab, it's not just learning about learning and learning design and the science, it's learning about yourself. And I think right now more than ever, when AI is really, really challenging our humanity and our cognitive abilities, we owe it to ourselves to learn a little bit more about us so that we can pass on that knowledge as well. Ah, wow. Whew, Linda, you got me. You almost got me. You almost got me on that one. So, just in the audience here, just if you want to throw in the chat or by show of hands, how many learning designers do I have in the house? I know I've got facilitators. Where are my designers? You guys all here? We've got a Yars coming in, a few here. Okay, so my learning designers, my facilitators. I think in one way, shape, or form, if you're involved in learning and sort of the learning and development function, you are in some way, shape, or form looking at the design of what's happening within the organizations. So this next question really has to do with the design itself. But before we go into that question, I think it's time for a little commercial audience break. So audience, this is for you. Let's just make sure you're still with us here. And one of the things that I'm constantly telling everybody, whether that's online, LinkedIn, learning's hard. It is. It's hard. It should be. We want it to be a little bit hard. So let's do a little experiment, shall we? Now, some of you have already done this one with me before, but let's see if you've learned. Hands up. Let's go. Hands up. Make a fist. All right. Thumbs down. First thing we're going to do is take a look at your brain, see what size it is. And then you can look at what everyone else is working with if you're on screen. All right, separate out those. Now what you're gonna do, you're gonna put your thumb up on one hand. Awesome. Pinky out on the other one. And at your own time, whenever you're ready, all I want you to do is switch, 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 switch. And this is how we demonstrate that learning is hard. And this is how I've ruined the rest of your days trying to figure out how to do this. It doesn't happen right away. So keep practicing that. Believe me, you can get this within a few days if you really train those motor pathways. But that is also to demonstrate learning is hard. Behavior and habit change is hard. And by the way, behavior and habits are not the same thing. Okay. Moving on. What do we got? So let's go into a little bit of learning design here. And the question is this: before joining the Cognitive Lab, how did you usually approach design or delivering learning?
Oftentimes it was very much cognitive overload where we have all this content that we need to share with our learners, and we want to get it all into a module or in-person training, whatever it might be. But it's just too much information all at once, and we're relying so much on subject matter experts to share their knowledge with us to help disseminate it, but not being intentional in our designs. And I think that was one of the biggest takeaways I had from the Cognitive Lab, is just that we need to be very intentional in how we're developing our content and putting the thought process into it and taking the time. As you said, learning is hard. And we do need to have a little bit of that struggle, which is an important piece that I think a lot of people tend to miss, that they want learning to be fun and it's often passive and they're not really taking that information in. So now understanding a little bit more, and I don't know if that's going to be another question, but just in terms of how we can direct focus on certain pieces of the content rather than overloading and having a data dump where it's a slide with full paragraphs of text on it, because every key point we think is important, but we're just causing distraction for our learners. We just wanted to make it engaging so that we keep people in the training, but engaging isn't the same thing as learning.
There we go. I think if we would have had a drinking game going on in the Cognitive Labs, they would have all been wasted every time I said strategic and intentional. Like it just, everyone would have been drunk just within the first 10 minutes. Yeah, strategy and intention.
Yeah, building on that, I think with intention, I didn't previously, I didn't take into account emotion. I really didn't really think very much. I didn't know how long, or I didn't know how long it took for something to actually be be held in the memory, which is like seconds. And so I wasn't thinking about when I switch topics, I might have a transition from one topic to the next, but I wasn't thinking about that other thing that they just that I just introduced. I was going to say that they just learned, and that's an assumption too, right? That they just learned that so I can move forward. That thing needs to be carried through because the brain just doesn't learn that way. And so for me, going back to my designs, I'm thinking, how can I incorporate this all the way through? Which those of you that participate in the lab will see Lauren brings those things all the way through. And there were some of us where we were like, I remember this, but I don't remember, because that's how the brain learns. And by the end, I feel like I understand Slimer, and I understand you all won't know what all of these mean, but that's how it's forcing me to look back at my designs and even just something as simple as a break. I never incorporated breaks into e-learning. I didn't really think about take a break, close your eyes, walk away from the computer for 2 seconds. Things like that are so important. And in Lauren's session, we experience that, and we experience the importance of that and coming back and how it resets the brain. I never thought of that before. I didn't incorporate these things into my learning before. So for me, it's a new way of looking at design.
Awesome. Adarsh, I see your questions there. We're going to get to those just in a bit. And Tina's got some comments, which is like so true, right? Just learned versus I just told them. There's this will show up in one of my keynotes eventually. This will be on the big stage one day, but in our class on behavior and habit, there's like an epic slide with stormtroopers that demonstrate that exactly. It's so good. It's going to wind up on stage one day. But yeah, and I'll say this as well. I think it probably took you guys to session maybe as far as session 3 when you began to realize how much more challenging it was going to be to design like this, because you always are thinking, and it is challenging because you guys are still in your learning phase. You haven't encoded long-term memory for everything you learned in the lab. The more you start using it, the more you start practicing and rehearsing it, that this will also hopefully become second nature to you as it is for me. But just for everybody out there as well, just so you do know, this is not, it's not easy learning. It can be fun learning and engaging learning, but it does require a lot more from us as the learning professionals to be forward thinking about the key question, which is how we start the lab, which is, are you working with the brain? Are you working against the brain? And the only way that you're going to know that is if you learn a little bit more about these 3 pounds of meatloaf we carry around with us all day. So we're just at 20 past the hour, and I want to make sure that that everyone else has an opportunity to speak with you as well. A little bit, and I'll ask you just sort of keep these a little bit consistent, but obviously everyone who knows that how I design, I don't lecture as much. I try not to lecture at you as much. So the question is, how did the lab's mix of the experiments, the live sessions, and the design work demos impact the way the learning landed for you?
Having the mix really helped to reinforce a lot of the learning in very different ways. Especially the experiments, it's always fun to see how we can use those in our learning and see the impact that they have. And same thing, the live sessions, by being able to ask questions as they go through for clarification, and as well the design work demos help us so that we can look at it and audit and see where we can notice that there's things that could be improved in somebody else's work, and then we can take that into our own work and our designs.
Yeah, there were tangible examples that we went through that we can use in our own designs, but I think they were also created intelligently by Lauren to challenge our own perceptions about learning. Much like we did at the beginning of this session, there were a lot of experiments that we did where it was like, whoa, this is hard. And it's, I don't personally, I will now, but sometimes I forget to put myself in the shoes of the learner. And sometimes I think I've got all this stuff like Reese was talking about before. We're given all of this stuff and we're told just put it out there. They need to learn it. And then a box is checked, right? But but it just doesn't happen that way. And these experiments that that we went through in the session, some of them, you know, and the way that Lauren designs is that she integrates in the different areas of the brain that we're using, and so they're emotional. You know, they challenge cognition, they challenge memory. Um, they're they're both something that we can use in our sessions and something that challenges us to see things through the eyes of the learner, which I think is super important. And it reminded me of the importance of doing that all of the time. I'd like to say that I always do that. And I think I got into a little bit of a funk at one point where I was just, things became a little bit procedural. And taking this course sort of reminds me of that I can do so much more.
Oh. And I mean, let's face it, I messed with you guys quite a bit in the labs.
Yeah, but it was good. It was good.
You know, I had all of my guinea pigs in one place. So it was like it was great fun. I learned a lot too. And I should say that through our sessions, I learned a lot as well. Now, just for the sake of time, I'm going to skip over this question, but feel free to answer it in the chat, which is if you want to share something that you applied right away. I've been working with you guys for the last 7 weeks, and we've had our office hours, so I know what you've been working on. But things that might have changed for you or things that helped you, a problem in the organization, you can throw that in the chat. But for the last question here, what I really want to get to is this, is what did you appreciate about being part of a cohort versus your own learning? And of course, I was gonna bring up from our first day of class.
Being part of a cohort is so beneficial for learning because you get to hear different perspectives and different things that maybe either you didn't think of and it shines a new light on it, or it's something that maybe you're afraid to ask and others are jumping in. So having a cohort, you going through that journey with you, you know that you're not alone and you can learn so much from one another, even if they're not doing the same type of work that you're doing, because I know we're all very different in our fields. But we can take a lot of that information or the questions that they have to better our own learning for our organizations.
Yeah, as Reese said, it was a group of people with very different backgrounds, doing different things, working on different learning content. That made it that much more interesting to be able to understand how others are applying it, share ideas, brainstorm, work in small groups. There were times when we worked in smaller groups. It was just so much more fulfilling than just learning. I mean, I do a lot of learning on my own, but being able to share this with a group with the guidance of Lauren all the way through and never feeling you're learning a lot. And Lauren's got some crafty ways of reinforcing the learning, but you never feel stupid or it's just continually challenging but fun and interesting, and it was just a great experience.
Okay, so this is the last question before we're gonna open it up because I realize we're getting to time, but like you can answer this. Any one memory that sticks out to you?
Oh, I don't have anything specific because there's just so much information, but overall, the whole journey was just so fun, but so beneficial. So, again, we said we want to just avoid having the excitement and entertaining with that, but having very intentional, a lot of humor, a lot of different ways that we can go about it. So, I don't have anything specific, but the whole process was just incredible.
There was that one time I made you all cry, but you know, we recovered. We recovered.
There was a lot of crying and a lot of psychological challenges. No, I'm kidding. There was one element where, and I don't want to ruin it, but so I won't tell you too much, but Lauren incorporates elements of surprise and whimsy and emotion, and those really stuck with me because they because that's how the brain learns. And these types of things do stay with us. And so I think of those now, and I think, how can I incorporate that into what I'm designing without it being overkill? Because as we know, the brain gets conditioned to looking for things, or as we may not know, the brain gets conditioned for looking for those things. So the elements of whimsy and surprise and emotion, and just the idea of incorporating emotion into learning design fascinates me, and so that kind of stuck with me.
Awesome. So I've just put up there that we do have, I have, these are, so you guys are the first to find out about the next sessions that I'm going to be doing. 10 spots only. I think I learned from the first sessions that we can't have any more than 10 people in that room. It will just disseminate the learning for everybody. So 10 spots only for both sessions. And with that, I'm going to end with my music again. And I will open the floor up to questions. And I'm going to stop sharing just so I can see everybody and go into the chat at this point. So let's go back up. So someone was asking if we had, so how does time participate? So how does time I think you're asking how much time does it take for a participant to realize gains of training in personal and professional at work? So when did things start changing for you guys?
Things started changing for me after the first session. As soon as I attended the first one, I suddenly thought about all the learning design that I've already done and lives in our LMS. I'm like, oh, I need to make some major changes here. But at the same time, it's important to not just go back and scrap everything. Your existing modules might already have some great benefit in it, but taking the time to audit and go back into them and then improve them for future learning sessions, I think is really beneficial. Because it's not just to toss everything aside that already exists, but always looking at it from an iterative process and make those improvements constantly. And we just build upon it week after week.
Yeah, same thing for me. First session, I actually had a client at that time that was adding me or asking me to put audio into a session in addition to visuals and text. And at the end of the very first session, I had enough knowledge to be able to go back and ask them why and have that conversation with them. And as a result of it, they said, we don't need the audio. We understand it's just going to be too much. So I was more confident as a result of the very first session in having that conversation with my team and with external clients.
Awesome. Louise, you were asking about AI and the impacts on our brain, and if we discussed that in the labs. We did not directly. It did come up in some of the sessions in and out, but right now there's not enough longitudinal studies and research on the impacts to really be able to give great, evidence on it. But yes, we are seeing the research on cognition and on our cognitive control and executive function, but we didn't get right into the deeps of it. I think Deanna, your question might have just been answered. About says, what is one design change you'll make tomorrow because the lab, and what brain research is it based on? Oh no, see, I didn't quiz you, but but I think Dan gave you a thumbs up. You already answered that. If you want to connect with these guys, I'm sure they'd be open to answering any other questions that you do have. And I think that's all we really have time for because Kirsty and I have a meeting. um, oh, and to Wendy, yeah, it's really. I'll say this on recording because I'm not afraid to, is we've seen so many of our fellow colleagues and our learning and development professionals become redundant, the teams be made, entire teams be wiped out within an email. And I'm not afraid to say that, it's heartbreaking that these are our friends and our colleagues that this is happening to. But it's time for L&D to really upskill themselves and across the UK and Europe, Kirsty is saying as well. It's happening globally. And I've been banging this drum of the brain for about 8 years now with Learning Pirate, 10 years, 10 years myself. And the fact of the matter is that if we don't really know what learning is, if we don't know how to design learning properly, we don't know how to help another human brain transfer those skills, those behaviors, those habits that these organizations want, then we just can't prove value. And we're only half the problem. Everybody else is the other half. We can only do so much on our side, but at the end of the day is we really need to do the work ourselves so that we can help others do the work on their side of the table. So with that, my friends, that was our 30-minute quick and dirty. I really appreciate those of you who spent the, 30 minutes just, coming in and seeing what the lab was all about. I will be sending out an email to everyone who registered that has the brochures, so you can see exactly everything. This was recorded, so I'll put it up somewhere. And to everyone, just thank you so much for believing in science and in the brain and what we can do for the industry as a whole. And thank you once again to my new grads, Reese and Linda. Thank you guys so much for trusting me with your journey and for trusting me just with this session, because you really had no idea what you were walking into. So thank you all so very much. And I'll see you on the other side. Get in touch with any questions you have. Bye.
Thank
Kirsty,
you.
we'll jump over. Yeah? Okay. Bye, everyone. Linda, Reese, love you guys so much.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
All right, guys.
Gosh,
I might see
some of those questions got to me in a way I didn't expect emotionally. So
it was human. It was human. All right,
yeah.
you guys.
Thanks so
I'll see
much.
you probably maybe somebody on Friday for